Poor single black dad let a shivering girl sleep in his home, unaware she was Billionaire's daughter. The steam from the industrial dishwasher had long since fogged up the small window above the sink, but Andre Miller didn't need to look outside to know it was snowing again. He could feel it in his bones, that particular ache that came with Chicago winters, the kind that settled deep into your joints after 12 hours on your feet in Mel's diner. "Order up!" Mel's gravelly voice cut through the dinner rush noise. "2 burgers, extra pickles, and tell table 6 their coffee's coming." Andre wiped his hands on his apron, the fabric stained with everything from ketchup to grease, and grabbed the plates. At 37, he moved with the efficient grace of someone who learned to make every step count. No wasted motion, no extra energy. Because when you're raising an 8-year-old daughter on a diner cook's salary, every ounce of strength matters. "Here you go, folks." He set down the burgers with a smile that didn't quite reach his tired eyes. The couple barely looked up from their phones. Back in the kitchen, Andre glanced at the clock. 9:47 p.m. Maya would be asleep by now, curled up in their fold-out couch that doubled as her bed in their cramped one-bedroom apartment 6 blocks away. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door was watching her, again. The elderly woman never asked for payment, just accepted Andre's promise to fix her leaky faucet. When he got a chance. "You look like hell, Miller," Mel said, not unkindly. The older man had owned the diner for 30 years and had seen more than his share of people just trying to survive. "Why don't you head out? Jimmy can handle the late crowd." Andre started to protest. The tips from the night shift helped pay for Maya's school supplies, but Mel held up a hand. "Go home to that little girl of yours. Tuesday's soup night, ain't it?" It was. Every Tuesday, no matter how exhausted he was, Andre would come home and make soup with Maya. It had started as a practical thing. Soup was cheap, filling, and could last for days. But somewhere along the way, it had become their tradition. Maya would chatter about her day while chopping vegetables with her plastic knife, and Andre would let the warmth of the kitchen and his daughter's laughter wash away the stress of another day spent making ends meet. "Thanks, Mel." Andre untied his apron and grabbed his jacket, a second-hand winter coat that had seen better years but still kept out most of the cold. The alley behind the diner was where they kept the dumpsters, a narrow stretch of concrete that most people hurried through without looking twice. Andre had walked this path hundreds of times, but tonight something made him pause. A small figure huddled against the brick wall near the emergency exit, barely visible in the dim light from the security lamp. At first, he thought it might be a pile of old clothes or trash bags. But then the pile moved, and Andre's heart stopped. It was a girl. Maybe 10 or 11 years old, sitting with her knees drawn up to her chest. She was wearing what looked like a thin dress, no coat, no shoes, her dark hair damp with melting snow. "Hey," Andre called out softly, not wanting to startle her. "You okay, sweetheart?" The girl's head snapped up, and Andre caught a glimpse of wide, frightened eyes before she scrambled to her feet. She was small for her age, delicate in a way that made Andre think of expensive china, the kind he'd only seen in store windows. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't quite place. Not southern, not foreign, just refined. "I'll move. I was just..." "Whoa, hold on." Andre held up his hands, showing he meant no harm. "You don't need to go anywhere. I just wanted to make sure you're all right." The girl wrapped her arms around herself, shivering so hard her teeth chattered. "I'm fine. Thank you." But she wasn't fine. Andre could see that much. Her lips had a bluish tint, and her feet, God, her bare feet, were red with cold. "What's your name, honey?" She hesitated, as if even that simple question was dangerous. I don't. It's okay." Andre crouched down to her level, making himself less intimidating. "My name's Andre. I work here." He gestured toward the diner. "Can I ask you something? When's the last time you ate?" The girl's stomach answered for her, growling loud enough to be heard over the wind. She flushed, embarrassed. "Tell you what," Andre said, standing slowly. "It's cold out here, and I was just about to grab some dinner before heading home. Why don't you come inside, warm up a bit? Just until your hands stop shaking." She looked at him with the kind of wariness that broke Andre's heart. It was the look of someone far too young who'd learned not to trust kindness. "I don't have any money," she whispered. "Did I ask for any?" That seemed to surprise her. She studied his face in the dim light, as if trying to solve a puzzle. "I promise I'm not trying to hurt you," Andre said gently. "I've got a little girl at home, about your age. If she was out here in the cold, I'd hope someone would help her too." Something in his voice must have convinced her, because she nodded slowly. The diner was nearly empty now, just a trucker nursing his third cup of coffee and a young couple sharing a piece of pie. Andre led the girl to a booth in the back corner, away from prying eyes. "Mel," he called out, "can you fix up a bowl of that chicken soup? And maybe some hot chocolate?" Mel looked up from the register, took one look at the shivering girl, and nodded. "Coming right up." Andre slid into the booth across from her. Up close, he could see she was even younger than he'd thought, maybe 9 or 10. Her dress, despite being wrinkled and damp, was clearly expensive. The kind of thing Maya would point to in store windows and call princess clothes. "This is really nice of you," the girl said quietly, her hands wrapped around the mug of hot chocolate Mel had brought over. "I'll pay you back someday. Don't worry about it." Andre watched her take small, careful sips, as if she was afraid of spilling. "You want to tell me how you ended up out there?" She tensed, and Andre quickly added, "You don't have to. Just making conversation." The soup arrived, and the girl ate slowly, methodically, like someone who'd been taught proper table manners. But Andre noticed she kept glancing toward the door, as if expecting someone to come bursting in. "It's getting late," Andre said finally. "Do you have somewhere to go tonight? Someone who's worried about you." The girl's spoon clattered against the bowl. For a moment, Andre thought she might cry, but she composed herself quickly. "I'll figure something out," she said with the kind of forced bravery that made Andre's chest tight. He thought about Maya, safe and warm in their apartment. He thought about Mrs. Rodriguez, who watched his daughter without being asked because that's what people did for each other. He thought about the spare blanket in their closet and the couch that, while lumpy, was better than a snowy alley. "Listen," he said carefully. "I live just a few blocks from here. It's not much, but it's warm and safe. You could stay the night, just for tonight, and in the morning we can figure out how to get you home." The girl stared at him with those wide, serious eyes. "You don't even know me." "No," Andre admitted. "But I know you're cold, you're scared, and you're just a kid. And no kid should have to spend the night on the street." For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the coffee machine and the soft jazz Mel always played after 9. Finally, the girl nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Just for tonight." As they walked through the snow toward his apartment, Andre couldn't shake the feeling that this quiet, polite child was running from something bigger than he could imagine. But right now, all that mattered was getting her warm and safe. He had no idea that by morning, everything in his carefully balanced world would be turned upside down. Andre woke to the sound of whispered conversation coming from the living room. For a split second, panic shot through him. Had someone broken in? Then he remembered the girl from the alley, and his heart rate slowed. The voices were too young, too innocent to be threatening. He pulled on a t-shirt and padded barefoot to the doorway, stopping when he saw them. Maya was sitting cross-legged on the floor in her pajamas, her wild curls still messy from sleep. Across from her, the girl from last night sat with perfect posture, her legs tucked neatly to one side. Even sleeping on a lumpy couch, she'd somehow managed to look composed. "And that's Mr. Whiskers," Maya was saying, holding up a ragged stuffed cat. "He's missing an eye, but Daddy says that makes him special, not broken." The girl, Sophie, Andre had learned her name was Sophie when she'd quietly introduced herself before bed, reached out tentatively to touch the toy's remaining button eye. "He's very handsome," she said solemnly, and Andre was struck again by the way she spoke. It wasn't just that she was articulate for someone her age. It was the careful precision of each word, like she'd been trained to speak in a way that left no room for misinterpretation. "You can hold him if you want," Maya offered. "He likes new people." Sophie accepted the stuffed animal with the kind of reverence most people reserved for priceless antiques. "Thank you. I'll be very careful with him." Andre cleared his throat softly, and both girls looked up. Maya bounced to her feet immediately. "Daddy! Sophie slept on our couch, and she likes Mr. Whiskers, and she said my hair is pretty, and she knows how to make her bed with hospital corners." "What are hospital corners?" "They're a way of folding sheets so they look neat," Sophie explained, setting Mr. Whiskers gently on the coffee table. "I should go now. Thank you for letting me stay, Mr. Miller. You've been very kind." She stood with fluid grace, smoothing down her wrinkled dress. Andre noticed she'd somehow managed to make the throw pillow and blanket look like a hotel display. "Hold on there," Andre said. "Where exactly are you planning to go?" Sophie's composure flickered for just a moment. I'll figure something out. I don't want to impose any longer." "Impose?" Maya looked confused. "What's that mean?" "It means she thinks she's bothering us," Andre explained, his eyes never leaving Sophie's face. "Which she's not. Have you eaten breakfast, Sophie?" "I'm not hungry, thank you." As if on cue, her stomach growled loudly. Maya giggled, and even Sophie's serious expression cracked slightly. "Pancakes," Maya announced. "Daddy makes the best pancakes in the whole world." "Well, maybe just our building, but still really good." "I couldn't," Sophie protested, but Andre was already heading to the kitchen. "Maya, why don't you show Sophie how to work the TV while I cook? She might want to watch cartoons." Maya grabbed the remote with enthusiasm, but Andre noticed Sophie staring at the device as if it were an alien artifact. "See, you just press this button," Maya explained, clicking the power button. The small television flickered to life, showing the morning news. "And then these buttons change the channels, and this one makes it louder." "I don't really know how to," Sophie began, then stopped herself. "Could you show me again?" Andre paused in the middle of cracking eggs. Most kids Sophie's age had been using remotes, since they could hold them. Hell, Maya had figured out the TV controls when she was 4. But Sophie watched Maya's demonstration with the intense focus of someone learning a completely foreign skill. "Here, you try," Maya said, handing over the remote. Sophie held it delicately, pressing buttons with careful deliberation. When she accidentally landed on a cartoon, Maya cheered, but Sophie seemed more interested in the mechanics of the remote itself than what was on screen. The pancakes were nearly ready when Andre's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID, Department of Children and Family Services. He'd looked up their number the night before, thinking he should report finding Sophie. Now, watching her help Maya stack the plates with unnecessary precision, he hesitated. "Maya, can you watch the stove for just a minute? Don't touch anything, just tell me if it starts smoking." Andre stepped into the bedroom to take the call, but before he could even dial back, he heard Sophie's voice from the living room, sharp with panic. "Who was that calling?" "Just work stuff," Andre lied, returning to find Sophie standing rigid by the couch, all the color drained from her face. You weren't calling about me, were you?" Her voice was small, terrified. Andre looked at her carefully. "Would that scare you?" "Please." The word came out as barely a whisper. "Please don't tell anyone where I am. I'll leave right now if you want, but please don't call anyone." The fear in her voice was so raw, so desperate, that Andre felt something cold settle in his stomach. This wasn't the fear of a runaway worried about getting in trouble. This was deeper, more primal. "Sophie," he said gently, crouching down to her level. "Are you safe at home? I mean, really safe?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then looked away. I need a little more time. Before anyone finds me. Please." Andre studied her face, the careful composure that couldn't quite hide the vulnerability underneath, the way she held herself like she was afraid of taking up too much space. Maya had gone quiet, sensing the sudden tension in the room. "Okay," he said finally. "No phone calls. But I need you to promise me something. If you're in danger, if someone hurt you, you'll tell me. Deal?" Sophie nodded quickly, relief flooding her features. "Deal. And Mr. Miller?" "Thank you for everything." As they sat down to eat pancakes, Sophie carefully cutting each bite into perfect squares while Maya chattered about school, Andre couldn't shake the feeling that he was harboring more than just a runaway child. He was hiding someone who was desperately afraid of being found. By Friday, Sophie had developed a routine that fit into their lives like she'd always belonged there. Andre would wake to find her already up, sitting quietly at their small kitchen table with Maya's homework spread before them both. She never asked if she could help, just naturally fell into the role of tutor, her patient voice guiding Maya through math problems that had stumped them both the night before. "If Tommy has 12 apples and gives away 4, Sophie would say, her tone gentle but precise. "How do we figure out what's left?" 12 minus 4. Maya would respond, pencil moving carefully across the paper. "That's 8. "Exactly. You're getting so good at this." Andre would pour his coffee and watch them work together, struck by how Sophie seemed to know exactly how to explain things in ways Maya could understand. It was like she'd been trained to teach, though that seemed impossible for someone her age. The apartment had taken on a different rhythm with Sophie there. She moved through their space with quiet efficiency, folding laundry into neat stacks that put Andre's haphazard attempts to shame. She never asked where things belonged, just observed for a day or two, then started putting dishes away in the right cabinets, hanging towels on the proper hooks. "You don't have to do that," Andre told her one evening, finding her organizing Maya's toys into careful categories. "I don't mind," Sophie replied, not looking up from arranging the crayons by color. "It helps me think." Andre wanted to ask what she needed to think about, but something in her posture, the way she held her shoulders just a little too straight, told him she wasn't ready for that conversation yet. What surprised him most was how naturally she'd adapted to their evening routines. After Maya went to bed, Andre would put on his old jazz records, scratchy albums he'd inherited from his father. Usually, he'd sit alone in the dark, letting the music wash away the day's stress. But now Sophie would appear silently from the living room, curl up in the corner of the couch, and listen. She never spoke during these times, just sat with her hands folded in her lap, eyes closed, as if the music was something sacred. Sometimes Andre caught her swaying slightly to the rhythm, and he'd wonder what kind of life she'd come from that made her so starved for simple pleasures. Tuesday morning, he found her standing in front of their small gallery wall, a collection of photos Maya had insisted they hang above the couch. Most were school pictures and candid shots Andre had taken with his phone, Maya missing her front teeth, Maya covered in flour from a baking disaster, Maya and Andre at the park last summer. Sophie was staring at them with an intensity that made Andre pause in the doorway. "Those are nice pictures," she said without turning around. "Maya looks happy in all of them." "She is happy," Andre said, joining her. "Most of the time, anyway." "And you do that together? Take pictures just because?" There was something wistful in her voice that made Andre's chest tighten. "Sure. Don't you have family pictures?" Sophie was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. "Not like these," she said finally. "Not ones where people look real." Before Andre could ask what she meant, Maya bounced into the room, ending the moment. But throughout the day, he kept thinking about the way Sophie had said, "real," like it was something foreign and precious. Wednesday evening, as they sat around the table sharing a dinner of grilled cheese and tomato soup, Sophie looked around their cramped space and smiled. "It's so cozy here," she said, the words slipping out naturally before she seemed to realize what she'd said. Her eyes widened slightly, as if she'd revealed something she hadn't meant to. "Cozy's a nice way of saying small," Andre said with a laugh, but Sophie shook her head seriously. "No, I mean cozy. Like safe. Like a place where good things happen." Maya beamed. "That's what I always tell people. Our apartment is small but it's full of love, right, Daddy?" "Right, baby girl." That night, While Andre washed dishes and Sophie helped Maya with the art project, he listened to their quiet conversation and realized something had shifted. This wasn't temporary anymore. Somewhere in the past week, Sophie had stopped being a guest and started being family. The thought should have terrified him. He barely had enough money to support Maya, let alone another child. But watching Sophie carefully help Maya color inside the lines, seeing the way his daughter's face lit up whenever Sophie praised her work, Andre found he couldn't imagine their evenings without her quiet presence. Thursday afternoon, Maya ran to him with a piece of construction paper, her face glowing with pride. "Look what I made in art class!" It was a crayon drawing of their apartment, complete with their small table, the couch, and 3 stick figures. One had curly hair and a big smile, clearly Maya. One was tall with kind eyes, Andre. And in the middle, holding both their hands, was a smaller figure with long dark hair. "That's our family," Maya announced. "Me and you and Sophie. Ms. Garcia said I drew it really good." Andre stared at the drawing, his throat tight. Sophie stood behind him, so quiet he'd almost forgotten she was there. "Maya," Sophie said softly, "that's beautiful. Really beautiful." But when Andre turned to look at her, Sophie's face had gone pale. She was staring at the TV, where the local news was playing on low volume. Andre followed her gaze and felt his blood run cold. On the screen was a photograph of Sophie, professionally taken, perfectly posed, above a caption that read, "Missing Sophia Langford, age 10. $100,000 reward for information." Sophie's face had gone white as paper. Her hands were shaking. "I have to go," she whispered, backing toward the door. "I have to go right now." Andre looked between the terrified girl in his living room and the picture on his TV screen, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Sophie wasn't just any runaway child. She was someone people were willing to pay a fortune to find. "Sophie, wait." Andre stepped between her and the door, his voice calm despite the chaos swirling in his head. "Just wait a minute." She stopped, her whole body trembling, but she didn't turn around. Maya looked between them, confusion written across her 8-year-old face. "What's wrong?" Maya asked. "Why is Sophie scared?" Andre gently took the remote from Maya's hands and switched off the TV. "Maya, sweetheart, why don't you go to your room and work on that puzzle for a few minutes? Sophie and I need to talk." "But, please, baby girl. Just for a little bit." Maya sensed the seriousness in his tone and reluctantly headed to the bedroom, shooting worried glances over her shoulder. When they were alone, Andre turned back to Sophie. She was still facing the door, her small frame rigid with tension. "Sophie," he said gently. "Or should I say Sophia?" Her shoulders sagged as if he'd cut invisible strings holding her upright. Slowly, she turned around, and Andre saw tears streaming down her face. "You saw," she whispered. "I saw. Sophia Langford." Andre moved to the couch and sat down, patting the cushion beside him. "Want to tell me about it?" She shook her head frantically. "You don't understand. They'll find me now. They'll take me back and it'll be worse because I embarrassed him and—" Hey. Andre kept his voice soft, the same tone he used when Maya had nightmares. "Nobody's taking you anywhere right now. But I need to understand what's going on. Can you help me do that?" Sophie wiped her nose with the back of her hand, the first unpolished gesture he'd seen from her. Slowly, she moved to the couch but perched on the very edge, as if ready to bolt. "My name is Sophia Catherine Langford," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "My father is Henry Langford. He owns Langford Technologies, and Prestige Academy Schools, and a lot of other things." Andre felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. Henry Langford was one of those names you saw in the business section of newspapers, on Forbes lists. The kind of wealth that was so vast it became abstract. "Okay," he said carefully. "So why are you here instead of at home?" Sophie's composure finally cracked completely. The tears came harder, and with them, words that tumbled out like water through a broken dam. "Because I heard him talking to his assistant about me. On the phone in his office." I was supposed to be at my violin lesson, but I forgot my music books. She hiccuped, struggling to get the words out. He said I was getting too old to be cute anymore, that I needed to be more useful for the company image. He said I wasn't a person, I was a brand extension. Andre felt something cold and angry settle in his chest. He said that about his own daughter? He wasn't wrong, Sophie said bitterly, sounding far too old for her 10 years. That's all I've ever been. I have tutors instead of teachers, handlers instead of friends. My mother lives in France now. She sends birthday cards with her assistant's handwriting. My therapist has to sign papers saying she won't talk about our sessions because it might hurt Daddy's reputation. She looked around their small apartment, at the mismatched furniture, the stacks of library books, Maya's drawings taped to the refrigerator. I've never lived somewhere that smelled like pancakes, she said, her voice breaking. I've never had someone help me with homework just because they wanted to. I've never had anyone look at me and see just Sophie. Andre was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she told him. This child, this incredibly wealthy, powerful man's daughter, had been living in his apartment, eating his food, sleeping on his couch, and all she'd wanted was to feel normal. How long have you been planning this? He asked. I wasn't planning anything, Sophie admitted. I just started walking after I heard him say that, and I kept walking until I was so cold I couldn't feel my feet anymore. Then I saw your diner, and you were the first person who looked at me like I was just a kid who needed help. Sophia, your father must be terrified. Whatever he said, however he made you feel, I'm sure he loves you. She shook her head sadly. He loves the idea of me. The version of me that sits quietly at charity dinners and smiles for photographers and never has opinions that might complicate his image. But me? The real me? I don't think he's ever met her. Andre thought about Maya's drawing, still clutched in his hand. 3 stick figures holding hands. A family. What you're describing, he said slowly. That's not love. That's not what families are supposed to be like. I know that now, Sophie said, looking at him with those serious, too old eyes. Because I've seen what real family looks like. It looks like you making soup when you're exhausted from work. It looks like Maya sharing her favorite toy with a stranger. It looks like someone caring about whether you're happy, not just whether you're useful. Andre stared at this small girl who spoke like an adult, who'd been raised in unimaginable luxury but had never experienced the simple joy of being unconditionally loved. The contrast between her world and theirs was staggering. She was probably worth more than he'd earn in 10 lifetimes, but she'd chosen their cramped apartment over her mansion because it felt like home. The $100,000 reward, he said finally. Sophie nodded miserably. People will start calling now. Looking for me. It'll be on every news channel by tonight. As if summoned by her words, Andre's phone began to ring. Sophie looked at him with desperate eyes. Please don't answer it. Not yet. Just give me a few more hours of being Sophie. Before I have to go back to being Sophia Langford. Andre looked at his phone, then at this extraordinary little girl who'd brought such light into their lives, and made his choice. He turned the phone off. A few more hours, he agreed. But they both knew their borrowed time was running out. By Thursday evening, Andre's quiet street had transformed into a circus. News vans lined both sides of the narrow road, their satellite dishes reaching toward the gray Chicago sky like mechanical flowers. Reporters clutched coffee cups and checked their phones, waiting for any sign of movement from the small apartment building that had become the center of a national story. Andre peered through the blinds at the growing crowd. This is insane, he muttered. It's my fault, Sophie said from her spot on the couch, where she'd been sitting rigid with anxiety since the first van arrived 2 hours ago. I've ruined everything for you. Maya pressed herself against Sophie's side, her young face serious with worry. Are those people going to take Sophie away? Before Andre could answer, a black limousine glided through the crowd of reporters like a shark through minnows. The media swarmed as the car stopped, cameras flashing as a tall man in an expensive coat emerged. Henry Langford looked exactly like his newspaper photos, silver-haired, sharp-featured, with the kind of commanding presence that came from never being told no. Even from 3 floors up, Andre could see the controlled fury in the way he moved through the crowd, security guards clearing a path ahead of him. "He's here," Sophie whispered, her face pale as paper. Andre's phone had been ringing nonstop for hours. Reporters, police, child services, and numbers he didn't recognize. He'd ignored them all, but when the knock came at his door, firm, authoritative, he knew he couldn't avoid this conversation any longer. "Stay here," he told the girls, then walked to the door and opened it. Henry Langford stood in the narrow hallway flanked by 2 security guards and a woman in a business suit who was clearly a lawyer. Up close, the man was even more intimidating, tall, immaculately dressed, with cold blue eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. "Mr. Miller?" Langford's voice was crisp, controlled. "I'm Henry Langford. I believe you have something that belongs to me. If you're talking about Sophie, she's not a thing that belongs to anyone," Andre said quietly. "She's a little girl." Langford's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "My daughter has been missing for a week. Do you have any idea what you've put my family through?" "Your family?" Andre kept his voice level, but he felt anger building in his chest. "Where exactly was your family when a 10-year-old was sleeping in an alley?" "Daddy?" They all turned to see Sophie standing in the doorway to the living room, Maya clutching her hand. She looked so small next to the adults, but her chin was raised with quiet determination. "Sophia." Langford's expression softened slightly, but there was something performative about it, as if he was remembering he was supposed to look relieved. "Thank God you're safe. We're going home now." "I know," Sophie said. "But I have conditions." The lawyer whispered something to Langford, but he held up a hand to silence her. "Conditions?" His voice carried the tone of someone unaccustomed to negotiations with children. "Mr. Miller and Maya come with us. To the house. I want you to meet them properly." "Sophia, that's not. Those are my conditions," Sophie said, her voice steady despite the tremor Andre could see in her hands. "If you want me to come willingly, without any more scenes that embarrass you, then you'll invite them as my guests." Langford looked at Andre with the expression of someone trying to solve an unpleasant puzzle. "You're the cook. I'm the man who's been taking care of your daughter," Andre corrected. The billionaire's eyes narrowed. "What do you want? Money? A house? College fund for your daughter? Name your price." The casual assumption that everything was for sale, that Andre's kindness was just another transaction, hit him like a slap. "I don't want your money, Mr. Langford. Everyone wants money. You're raising a child alone on a cook's salary. I'm offering you a way out." "I'm not looking for a way out of being Maya's father," Andre said firmly. "And I didn't help Sophie because I wanted something from you. I helped her because she needed help." For the first time since arriving, Langford looked genuinely confused. "Then what do you want?" Andre glanced at Sophie, who was watching their exchange with anxious eyes. "I want you to promise me that you'll listen to her. Really listen. She's not a brand extension or a photo opportunity. She's your daughter, and she's brilliant and kind, and she deserves better than being treated like an asset. You don't understand the complexities of. I understand that a 10-year-old ran away from home because she felt more like a business investment than a beloved child," Andre interrupted. "If you want her back, prove to her that's going to change." The hallway fell silent except for the muffled sounds of reporters 3 floors below. Finally, Sophie spoke. "I'll come home," she said quietly. "But I want to visit here on weekends. I want to keep being friends with Maya. I want to have pancakes sometimes and listen to jazz music and be in a place where people care about whether I'm happy, not just whether I'm useful." Langford stared at his daughter as if seeing her clearly for the first time. "Sophia, I want a life that includes pancakes and jazz," she said simply. After a long moment, Henry Langford nodded. "Very well," he said. "Weekends." Sophie's face lit up with the first genuine smile Andre had seen since the news vans arrived. And Maya and Mr. Miller come to dinner next week, she added quickly. As my guests? Langford sighed, but Andre caught the ghost of a smile at the corner of his mouth. You drive a hard bargain, Sophia. I learned from the best, she said innocently. As they prepared to leave, Sophie hugged Maya tight and whispered something in her ear that made the little girl giggle. Then she turned to Andre. Thank you, she said simply, for seeing me. Andre knelt down to her level. Thank you for letting us be your family, even if it was just for a little while. It's not just for a little while, Sophie said firmly. Family isn't something you lose just because you don't live in the same house. And as Andre watched her walk away with her father, he realized she was absolutely right. 3 weeks later, Andre stood at the massive iron gates of the Langford estate, Maya's small hand gripping his tightly as they both stared up at the mansion beyond. It's like a castle, Maya whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. The house was something out of a magazine, all clean lines and towering windows, perfectly manicured gardens stretching in every direction. Andre had driven past places like this before, but he never imagined actually walking through their front doors. A security guard approached their modest sedan with professional courtesy. Mr. Miller? Miss Sophia is expecting you. As they drove up the winding driveway, Andre caught glimpses of a tennis court, a fountain that probably cost more than his annual salary, and gardens that looked like they required a full-time staff to maintain. This was Sophie's world, a universe of wealth and privilege that made their cramped apartment seem impossibly small in comparison. But when the front door opened and Sophie came running down the marble steps, her face glowing with genuine joy, Andre was reminded that the most important things couldn't be bought. Maya! Mr. Miller! She threw her arms around Maya first, spinning her around like they'd been separated for months instead of weeks. I miss you so much. I miss you too, Maya giggled. Did you really live in this big house all by yourself? Not anymore, Sophie said, taking Maya's hand. Come on, I want to show you everything. She led them through rooms that belonged in museums, soaring ceilings, artwork that Andre recognized from coffee table books, furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. Everything was beautiful, pristine, and somehow cold despite the obvious expense. This is the music room, Sophie said, gesturing to a space dominated by a grand piano that gleamed like black ice. I have lessons here every Tuesday and Thursday. Do you like playing? Andre asked. Sophie shrugged. It's fine. I'm good at it. But I like your jazz records better. They passed a library with floor-to-ceiling books, a formal dining room with a table that could seat 20, and a living room that looked like it belonged in an interior design magazine. Sophie dutifully showed them each space, but Andre noticed she never lingered, never touched anything, moved through it all like a polite tour guide rather than someone who lived there. And this is my room, she said finally, opening a door at the end of a long hallway. Andre expected something palatial, fit for a billionaire's daughter. Instead, he found himself looking at something that took his breath away for entirely different reasons. Yes, the room was large and luxurious. Hardwood floors, a canopy bed that could have housed a small family, windows overlooking the gardens. But scattered throughout the expensive perfection were small, familiar treasures that made Andre's chest tight with emotion. The throw blanket from their couch was draped over a velvet chair. A stack of worn paperback books from the library branch near their apartment sat on the nightstand next to what was probably a first-edition classic. Maya's stuffed cat, Mr. Whiskers, held a place of honor on the pillows. And there, in an ornate silver frame on the dresser that probably cost more than Andre's monthly rent, was Maya's crayon drawing. The 3 stick figures holding hands, their little family, displayed like the priceless artwork it had become. You kept it, Maya breathed, running over to touch the frame. Of course I kept it, Sophie said. It's the most beautiful thing I own. Andre stared at the drawing, remembering that afternoon when Maya had presented it so proudly. He thought about the journey that had brought them all here, from a snowy alley behind a diner to this mansion that felt more like a museum than a home. Sophie, he said quietly, are you happy here? She considered the question seriously, the way she considered everything. I'm happier than I was before. Daddy's trying, really trying. We have dinner together now, and he asks about my day instead of just telling me about his schedule. He fired the handlers and hired a real teacher who lets me ask questions. And Dr. Martinez doesn't have to sign papers anymore. That's good, Andre said, meaning it. But, Sophie continued, I'm happiest on weekends. When I get to be just Sophie again. Maya had discovered a collection of art supplies in the corner, expensive versions of the crayons and markers they used at home. Can we draw another picture? Maya asked. Maybe one of your big house this time? Actually, Sophie said, a mischievous glint in her eye. I was hoping we could do something else first. Daddy's in meetings all afternoon, and the kitchen staff has the day off. Want to make soup? Andre laughed, the first real laugh he'd had since walking through those imposing gates. In that showroom kitchen downstairs? It's just a kitchen, Sophie said with a shrug. Bigger than yours, but it works the same way. And I bought ingredients this morning. I thought maybe we could make it our thing, wherever we are. So they found themselves in the Langford Mansion's state-of-the-art kitchen, chopping vegetables on marble countertops worth more than Andre's car. But as Maya chattered about school and Sophie carefully stirred the pot with the same concentration she'd shown in their tiny apartment, Andre realized that some things were more powerful than money or social class. They'd created something that couldn't be bought or sold, a family bound not by blood or law or circumstance, but by choice. By seeing each other clearly and deciding that what they'd found together was worth keeping. You know what the best part about soup is? Sophie said as they waited for it to simmer. What's that? Andre asked. Sophie smiled, looking around at their unlikely family gathered in an unlikely place, and repeated words he'd heard her say that first night. There's always room for one more. As the scent of homemade soup filled the enormous kitchen, Andre understood that the richest thing he'd ever given Sophie wasn't shelter from the cold. It was the chance to be seen, really seen, without being managed or handled or turned into something she wasn't. And in return, she'd given them the same gift. Outside, the perfectly maintained garden stretched toward the horizon, but inside, in the warmth of the kitchen with laughter echoing off the expensive walls, they were simply family. And that, Andre knew, was worth more than all the money in the world.